So today's guest is one of the most distinct individuals we'll have the pleasure of learning from. When I think of politics, I have a range of thoughts and feelings. In some ways, it's the antithesis of the decolonization movement, which is why I think this conversation will be unique today. But when you get to the core of what politics means and what we're aiming to do in the practice of decolonization, there are lots of parallels. So I hope that throughout this episode, we're able to draw some of those points up. And today we have the one and only district representative, Jauwan Hall-Bertrand, with us. So Jauwan Hall-Bertrand is a native of Chicago Southside and currently serves as a district representative in the office of Congresswoman Robin Kelly. He's a U.S. military veteran, a graduate of the University of Illinois at Chicago, and currently serves as Young Professional Ambassador with the Chicago Council on Global Affairs. And with that, I welcome Jauwan Hall-Bertrand to Decolonize to Thrive.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Thank you. So, Jauwan, before I tell everyone what led to this podcast episode, I want to give you the mic and let you introduce yourself to us.
Okay. My name is Jauwan. As Ina so eloquently put it, I'm a native Southsider, served in the Marine Corps for 8.5 years, currently serving with the Illinois Army National Guard. And in between my military stints, I've been somewhat active in political spaces. So currently serving as a district representative in the office of Congresswoman Robin Kelly. Before that, I was on active duty, actually working as a recruiter. And prior to that, I worked with the National Democratic Training Committee, where we train down ballot candidates around the country to run for office.
Wow. So a lot. You've been doing some amazing things. So we are definitely fortunate to have you on today.
Yeah.
So this episode was sort of conjured up because you are one of the few political figures that I see who I think calls out injustices really plainly. So one of the things I noticed just from following you was how you brought to the forefront some of the things around critical race theory and how it really masks our true history and the impact of enslavement of African descendants. The need for reparations is something you've been very vocal about. I've seen references to Black Power and the truth that people like Assata Shakur can teach us. And just your, residing in the heart of the city of Chicago on the South Side made you a person that I think, political figures sometimes get this bad rep, but I see you as more human and more focused on really moving some initiatives forward that impact the Black community, especially on Chicago's South Side, in a positive way. And so I was really eager to get you in to talk about your perspective on decolonization and just all of the things that we'll discuss today.
Yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So I just want to start off with asking you first of all, what led you into the political arena?
So I would say to a large degree, my family was very instrumental in that. So I have on both sides of my family, like folks were just like active. My grandmother ran a small nonprofit in Inglewood. My paternal grandfather and grandmother were very active politically. My grandfather held elective office in Chicago. And I think it was always something that was just kind of around me. And then I would say, I guess I had like my own political awakening during my time in the service. I got I spent on my deployments, I would just kind of like just read, right? So reading was kind of this, a space I could just kind of like, go to and not focus on the fact that like, we got bombs like coming in on us like every couple of hours or so, right? And so I think just through like my own reading, and then also through just my own educational like trajectory, I kind of like really got interested in like this idea of reparations. And so my understanding of reparations really just kind of like led me into politics because I wanted to be an advocate for reparations specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, like that was really kind of like what drew me into it, like trying to figure out like what type of political action could like help bring about reparations and justice, right, for Black folks in America. So that was like my guiding light that kind of like got me into the work.
Wow. So reparations is something that we've been fighting for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people have, kind of lost hope in terms of what's possible for us actually ever attaining that. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's something we'll see in our lifetime?
I think we'll see reparations in our lifetime. So it's been a lot of movement. Say that again. I
said that's hopeful.
Yeah, so I can, and I only say this because like I've been around the work for so long. So 10 years ago, 2013, 2012 is when I kind of like was moving into like the reparation spaces. So like I got introduced to this group called NCOBRA, which is the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, right? NCOBRA has been the longest, NCOBRA is like the NAACP of reparations.
Okay.
Right. So they've been fighting for reparations, and they helped bring about HR 40, which is the congressional bill that will authorize a study for reparations. They brought that about in the 80s.
Okay.
And so, yeah, I think like my introduction at that time, like it was extremely difficult to get people to even like seriously talk about reparations as a thing. And I literally like I can't tell you how many people like just laughed in my face when even like trying to have a serious discussion about it.
I believe you.
Yeah, we're at a point now where like we're seeing reparations initiatives like actually take place, right? So like there was a reparations ordinance in Evanston, Illinois. The city of Chicago actually has a reparations ordinance on the books. We recently started a subcommittee of the Human Relations Committee in Chicago. It was developed to specifically bring up to date the Chicago ordinance around reparations. HR 40 had, I think, its first hearing, and I believe it was voted out of committee last year or the year before, which is something that we hadn't seen happen, right? Even during the Obama years, like it was like this, it kind of like came to a standstill. So I think the space that we're in now, and with all of the organizing and work that's been taking place around reparations. And also I think too, the fact that, we live in the era of George Floyd, of Breonna Taylor. I think like those political, I guess like the what's the word I want to use here? I guess the political atmosphere. Kind of like ripe for that type of policy. So
Yeah. Well, that's very, it makes me feel optimistic about what's possible for us in terms of receiving reparations in our lifetime. So thank you for sharing that. And as a fellow Southsider, a Chicago Southsider, I know many people who over the course of my life, and even I have at one point moved away from the city and have come back within the last few years or so. But many, people, we have like this deficit narrative about Chicago Southside, there's almost like this looming cloud over just like that being a part of your identity. Like you have to make it out of this part of the city. And so many people still, feel that way, even if those who are on the outskirts of our city who've now relocated to the suburbs, or we know a lot of people going down south, like to Atlanta and Texas. And we've stayed put. So I'll ask you to share, why is it important, in your opinion, that we continue to support our communities? And that's no judgment to people who decide to leave. But, as a Chicagoan, why do you think it is important that we continue to support and not abandon the South Side of Chicago?
Yeah, I mean, I see nothing but potential on the South Side of Chicago, right? Like I believe in my heart of hearts, like that the South Side just has the ability to flourish and thrive. Right. I think the South Side is just being strangled and, oppressed by various forces. And so I think a large part of the work requires us to, call out the systems that, are oppressing us,
Mm-hmm.
Think through, be thoughtful, and think through ways of, reorganizing that system.
Right.
And then having the wherewithal to continue to sustain whatever new systems we bring about.
Yeah.
And I think like that's like the South Side, I think like has the potential and capability to do that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons why I decided to stay. One of the reasons why I came back, right? So I mean, I was away in California living life and chose to come back to Chicago winters.
Yeah.
Because I love this city and I love what's possible, what I believe is possible. So.
Yeah, that I can relate to that. Every winter, I'm like, I'm still here.
Yeah.
But there's beauty. There is so much beauty and history in Chicago, and I think it's a really unique place. I'm really inspired by those who like Aisha Butler with Rage, Inglewood, Jamal Cole, My Black, My Hood, My City. There's so many people who really remind me of like how important it is, and like all of the amazing things are actually happening in our city that we don't hear about, and people who are really, boots on the ground and really out here with our young people and doing the work. And so it's really empowering. So thank you for sharing that.
Most stuff.
Now, this podcast is about the journey of decolonization, which looks different for everyone. And I know that my definition for that may, not necessarily align with yours, but I'm curious about what decolonization means to you as someone who is a political figure and involved in one of the more, people would say corrupt industries.
Man, so first, I don't know how much of a political figure I am.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I'll take it though. Cool. Let's roll with it. Right? And also I don't think politics is the most corrupt like institution. I think America was born of a corrupt thought process. And so I think all of our institutions to some degree have, they're tainted.
Right.
I just think politics is no different. It's no different from the financial industry, right? No different from the legal industry. You know what I'm saying? Like there are, cracks that need to be sealed, right? Exactly. The foundation is really shaky, right? And so with that, I'm sorry, the original question was like, what does decolonization mean, right?
Yes. So what does it mean to you? Right?
Yeah, it means a revolutionary political practice, right? Like seriously engaging systems in order to like turn them upside down and turn them on their heads. Thinking like it means at the root, like actually understanding the issues that are impacting us. So like, for example, right, the 3/5 clause, right? Like, what did it really mean? A lot of folks think, the 3/5 clause meant that Black people were counted as 3/5 of a human. And that's not necessarily how it was, like operationalized, right? The 3/5 clause was developed in order to give Southern slave owners more political representation, right? Which also gave them a higher tax burden as well, but it also gave them more power in the Congress. So when decisions are being made, that enslaved person now is being represented by somebody who probably doesn't have their best interests at heart, right? Because their representation is now tied up in somebody who owns them, right? Or has the power to say whether they can or cannot be property. And it still operates in different ways, right? So when you think of like the 13th Amendment and the exception to slavery clause, when you think about the 14th Amendment's representation clause, which was supposed to fix the 3/5 clause, it didn't necessarily do that, right? So when you put into focus and understand like these are the issues, or these issues are like what's impacting us, you can then like start developing a revolutionary practice that centers these problematic issues and starts to work to undo them or reconstruct them.
So that's a really powerful definition for decolonization. So revolutionary practice of addressing the issues that currently exist in a way that removes those barriers. How do you see that playing out in the work that you do, just for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, I think largely just about like staying active in these spaces, right?
Right.
I'm constantly trying to educate myself on the issues.
Yeah.
And then also just like knowing how to use my privilege in order to empower other folks.
Wow.
I think that's a huge thing. So like giving other folks the opportunity to, you know, like learn and participate in the work as well. And providing both resources, whether that be information or whether it be like some sort of like tangible resource, but just providing resources so folks can have, you know, the same level of ownership,
right,
within like the political space. So I mean, like as like a practical thing, I think one thing, some work I could talk about is just like I was formerly on a board for this organization called Chicago Votes. And one of the initiatives that we developed was this voting in jail initiative. So we register people in the Cook County jail to vote, and then also educate them on their voting rights. Wow. And Chicago Votes was very instrumental as well, like in just like my own like political and civic involvement and like trajectory. When I got to that organization, I think one of the things that attracted me was just like the thought of like them already having like revolutionary political practices in place. And one of those things was just, it was an initiative called Party at the Polls, where they took high school age students who were eligible to vote to the polling place, right?
Right.
And like, you know, like that was a whole like thing, just to see young people being civically engaged, asking questions that, you know, their parents probably not even asking, right? And taking ownership of the political space. So
yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
And I think that's a perfect segue into the next question I want to ask you. When we think about politics and the power of the Black vote, we know it exists, even when we can't always see the evidence of that. But, you know, what do you say to those who think that voting is not useful and has not really served the Black community well in the past?
Yeah, I would say I respectfully disagree. I also would say that, you know, even not voting is powerful, right? Because that in and of itself is a political statement, choosing not to vote. I would also say, I think, you know, folks just have to be cognizant of the fact that, you know, the political system is like a slow churning machine, right? It's really like, it's like playing football and like just playing a game of inches, right? We can only move a couple of inches at a time. So like it is very slow, but that doesn't mean that it's not serving our interests. And it doesn't mean that, you know, just choosing to completely tune out, I think it limits people's ability to have ownership, to have a stake in the society.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you know, everybody voted for Obama, like folks turned out for Obama, you know, and I'm sure like maybe his presidency might have been the cause of some people's reluctance to want to participate now, because he wasn't perfect. But I think the fact that, you know, we had a Black president, right, in the United States, that in and of itself is something that's like radical and different, right? So I think even if you weren't necessarily happy with all of the policies that came out of that administration, the fact that that administration even existed, right, is something that we didn't even think was possible 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Agreed.
Right? Nobody in the year 2000, 2001 foresaw Obama in 2008. Nobody did. So yeah, I mean, like I think we definitely have examples of how our power can bring about change. And I think, you know, we just got to like stay hopeful and focus on like the wins that we have had and understand like how those wins came about in order to get like future wins.
Yeah, that's really key. I even think about like Ketanji Brown Jackson. You know, that gave me a lot of hope.
Yeah.
I'll say. I do think that part of it is like people feel like there has to be an agenda in place for certain individuals to get into office. Or once they actually get there, the agenda changes, right? Like I think a lot of people lose hope in that way. But I understand what you're saying, and that if we don't use our vote at all, even that has implications. Right. And so there's a hard either way, but we have to figure out the hard that we want to try to fix or work towards. Well, it has been truly amazing chatting with you, Jauwan. I think that your perspective is so unique and important. And I just thank you for the work that you're doing and how you advocate on behalf of our communities. And your definition for decolonization is by far one of the most meaningful. Just thinking about
thank you.
The role that I believe we play as Chicago Southsiders. It's just people who want to see better because we know we deserve better. So how and where can we find you?
I'm on the social media space at Jauwan _ on Instagram.
Okay.
Jauwan Hall-Bertrand on Facebook, Jauwan Hall-Bertrand on LinkedIn. Always happy to talk about politics, and political spaces. So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Last thing, this is something I'm asking all of my guests is Black joy is resistance, and it's so important and it's revolutionary. So what's bringing you joy these days?
What's bringing me joy these days? I mean, I'm a Marvel nerd, so
okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like to rewatch the Marvel films, and pull different things from the films, look for Easter eggs. Yeah, I'm a nerd like that. So yeah, I definitely enjoy just, Netflix and chilling with some Marvel, well, I guess Disney and chilling with
okay.
with Marvel here and there, in between work and all the things.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much, Jauwan. It was a pleasure having you on, and I hope this won't be the last time we hear from you.
I hope not either.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.